Well, due to the wonders of modern science, I'm interviewing Neil today, The Voice, of various blog sites. The Voice has become famous over the years. And this is all about communication. And this is what we're doing. We're trying to communicate. We're going to try and communicate some ideas and thoughts. But of course, Jersey has now an official new communications director, or director of communications. And what he said has been very worrying. What have you heard so far, Neil? What are the worrying points?
Well, I read the little press release or whatever he is in the Jersey Evening Post online. And like yourself, I found it extremely worrying. The fact that he says only trust the mainstream media and don't trust what you read on social media. I mean, that's one of the scariest things I've heard in a long time. We know that the Jersey mainstream media has got a disgraceful record for covering up, lying, just being an enemy of the state. So the fact that this new communications unit chap has come out and saying only trust the people who have been lying to you and covering up all these years is extremely worrying. We know that the reputable blogs like myself, Rico Sorda, and others have exposed the mainstream media for its complicity with the government. So the fact that this new chap wants to silence us and discredit us is pretty much... he didn't mention blogs, in fairness. He said more Facebook and everything. He was talking about the coronavirus and all the rest of it. But still, the
context... Well, there's a bit of a backlash, isn't there, from the establishment, because people are putting out different views about the virus, which aren't in accord with what the government is saying, and that's got them worried. But that applies to anything. If you criticise the finance industry, you get this same backlash from the establishment, because that's the sort of status quo. But this guy, I mean, they go on about the accredited media and so on, but there's this problem in Jersey. What is an accredited person? What is an accredited communicator? What is he, a journalist? Is there any accreditation for journalists at all? Is there? In this island, there certainly isn't. But generally, they've been so discredited, haven't they? The journalism, generally, it's not just whether we get on with the JP, but generally, nationally, internationally, newspapers and other media, television, so on, they put out so many lies and so much rubbish. Why should we believe what they say in preference to people like you and me, or We Blog and other bloggers? Lots of very intelligent people out there putting information out on the social media. The alternative which isn't available, especially now when there's this virus which is causing everybody to be locked down.
Well, of course,
what's the cheek of the man? Is he a journalist? Well,
of course we don't know. You sent me a link to his LinkedIn profile the other day. I haven't read it yet, to be fair. I've looked for him on Twitter. I can't find him. It looks like he did have an account. If it's the same one, it looks like he had a Twitter account, but has got written of it. But getting back to what you're saying about this accreditation business, you and I and other bloggers have been fighting. It's a myth, this accredited stuff. Professional journalists have destroyed the lives of people. We've only got to read the Leveson report to show that the accredited media isn't, what do you call it, monitored. It's that they're holding each other to account, and we've got to look at the things like Christopher Jeffries, who was accused by the media basically and photoshopped by the accredited media. His life for being accused of killing a child. Obviously, it came out it wasn't him, but his life was destroyed by the media. The media lied to us about the Hillsborough thing. The media lied to us about weapons of mass destruction. The local media has lied all through the Operation Rectangle that we've reported strongly on, the care inquiry and all that. So, what is accreditation? What is accredited? We don't know. Nobody knows what accredited is.
This guy he's been flown in as a director. He's now established. He's permanent. He's not temporary. He's not on trial. He's a permanent director of communications. So he's here for the long term, without having been tried out at all. He walks into his office, presumably, and starts giving out dictates, orders. This is how it's going to be according to him. Now, okay, maybe the guy is a superhero, but I'd like to see the evidence. I don't know. He was recruited through the usual little recruiting from barracks, who are part of a very big recruiting organization. I'd like to know more about this process. How'd you find this guy? His background is very mysterious to me. And if he's a journalist, if he is a journalist, is he accountable? Is the communications unit accountable? Are they? Do they have to be accredited? Can we, if they say something which is blatantly wrong, and I feel sure they have already, I will do in the future, what liability have they got? Can we sue them? They're all about accreditation and having the system in place to censor. What can we do about them?
Well, obviously nothing. You know, we're powerless. The only power we have really is the internet, is our blogs, you know, and social media, Facebook, Twitter, all the rest of it. You know, they're trying to clam that down, shut that down, you know, and make us more of a police state and only listen to the, you know, to the official narrative. But, you know, which, you get your phone, Mike. So, you know, they only want us to hear the official narrative. And a lot of this has come over from the coronavirus stuff. And again, you ask the question, what is a journalist? Well, that's a fantastic question, because just recently, you know, I get cut off, as you know. They don't allow me on the BBC state radio over here. They cut me off when I do get on there. I regularly send in comments, and regularly they don't get read out. So the same happened yesterday. I sent in a comment, they didn't read it out. So I asked, who was the producer of this show? They said it was an editorial decision. That could mean anything. It's an editorial decision why they didn't read my comment out. That means nothing. So I said, well, who was the producer of the show, and what are their qualifications as a journalist? So they came back to me and said, oh, the producer, I'm not going to name the person because we don't want to get personalities involved here. But they said, oh, they've been a journalist for 40 years. Well, that isn't the question I asked. I asked, what are their qualifications? Where did they study for journalism? When did they study for it? And, you know, what qualifications did they get? And, of course, the BBC didn't answer that. They said, oh, they've been a journalist for 40 years. Well, what? You know, to me, that means this person studied 40, if they did study and have got any qualifications in journalism, they studied 40 years ago. Well, you know, a lot has changed in that 40 years. We're all, to some extent, you know, we're citizens journalists. We impart news. We expose, we do what the mainstream media should have been doing. We expose the cover-ups and corruption of our government, our law officers' departments and Attorney General's office. We've exposed all that, you know, on our blogs. So we are, if you like, citizens journalists. But there's this myth. There's some kind of a myth of accreditation.
Well, the myth is being blown wide apart at the moment, because here you are sitting in your kitchen, and so much of the so-called mainstream media, BBC, television, ITV, it's kitchen interviews, because we're all in lockdown. We're all in lockdown. The telephones, they keep buzzing away. I don't know why that one keeps ringing. But we're all in lockdown, and the BBC and all them, they're in lockdown. They're doing loads of these interviews, exactly like we're doing interviews, using Skype or other systems. So they're having to be the equivalent of citizens media. They're having to join us. They've had to join us. And I can't see, these guys must be getting worried, because they'll lose control, won't they? If the BBC can do what we're doing, well, we can do it, and everybody can do it. Well, and this must be worrying them. Because they'll lose control, won't they? This is the factor that's worrying.
Well, this is where we go back to the Dick Dastardly, or Dirk Dastardly, I think he's been called. I forgot, Dirk something Forsyth, you know, the head of communications. He's saying, oh, I only listen to the mainstream media, only listen to that. You know, and this is all about keeping control, because they can see, like you rightly said, control is being lost now, because they're having to do what us citizens journalists have been doing for years. And now they're going to say, well, you know, where do we get our news from? See, which brings us on to another aspect. We can see now the mainstream media are all the local old media. They used to be called the mainstream media, because the mainstream now is social media. That's mainstream. So, which is new media. But they're all complaining, the old media lot, that the government isn't being open, isn't answering questions, isn't agreeing to interviews, won't have interviews and everything. Well, the old media, the regulated media, the professional media, have only got themselves to blame here. This is the problem. The regulated media over here has been an ally of the government and law officers department, of the state all these years. It's covered up things for them. It's put out, wrong information for the government. So, and it's been compliant. It's been complicit. So now, all of a sudden, the general public want loads of questions answered around this coronavirus and the rest of it. The government isn't basically speaking with the media as a best thing. And the media are thinking, well, why not? Well, I'll tell you why not. It's because you've never questioned, the mainstream media or the old media has never questioned the state to any real degree. So the state obviously thinks to themselves, well, we haven't got the media to worry about because they're on board with us. They're on our side. So because of the pressure of public pressure and social media, new media pressure, the old media are under pressure, and they can't get answers from the government. Well, because they've never wanted answers from the government. The government think, well, the media are our friends, so as they always have been. So the media's got itself to blame. The government had no idea that
government's notoriously always, you can see what the gymnastics that Trump's going through. He wants total control over the media. He wants them to say what he wants to say. And this is the situation which governments always want. They want the government to say what they say.
Yeah, but then we're going into another realm. I've got to stop you there, Mike, because we're going into another realm there, aren't we? Because the likes of Trump and these billionaires and everything who are trying to shut down mainstream media, old media, well, again, I blame the media for that. The media lies, it has bias. So the media has abused its position all these years. So it's difficult to just say, oh, Trump's a bad guy because he's trying to shut the media down. Well, I don't buy into that narrative. I think the media has abused its trust and its position that all these years. And now people are just getting sick of it. They're getting pissed off with it. The media's been lying.
Themselves, because what we have to remember about the traditional media is that they have to make money. That's what they are. They're businesses. They're not out there like the BBC is supposed to be public service and it's funded by the public. But it's so desperately sad to see it becoming the mouthpiece of a government, whether it's the British government or the Jersey government, but especially so in Jersey. So you get the control, that it's the traditional. I mean, obviously, the worst example that Jersey's probably seen, though, is in the 18th century, and when the Germans were here, they had total control of the media. This is the sort of dreadful situation we could find ourselves in, because once this virus goes away, if it ever goes away, I can't see this attitude. This guy's a permanent director of communications. When he retires, there'll be somebody else. And the public will have accepted that the information, anything to do with government, anything to do with administration, any decisions they come through that as a mouthpiece. That's processed. It's like pre-processed food. And that's how it'll come to the public. And that's what the government want.
But that's pretty much the way it's always been over here anyway, isn't it? Like I say, the media they've churned out some of the gumph that the media have churned out over here, press releases. We go back to Mick Gradwell saying that the children's teeth that were found up at the Hotel Garenne, some with root still attached, they couldn't have been shed naturally. He said, they were left there for the bloody tooth fairy. The media reported and repeated that. They didn't question it. So the media has never really questioned. So I don't see that we're going into anything really new here. In Jersey, I think, on a bigger scale, globally, possibly. But in Jersey...
What's new about it, I might interject, is that we've moved on to a phase where so-called media, we're using on Skype, these sorts of things, make it available to the public. And this guy has declared we shouldn't be using this, what he's saying. People should be listening to their mouthpiece, the JEP, which is a failing newspaper anyway. That's what the trouble, isn't it? So,
well, I wouldn't just, I don't think it's fair just to single out the JEP, because in fairness, I think
but
it
he
has.
specifically did, and he said we should be reading the JEP.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what
yeah,
he
you're
said.
right. Yeah, yeah. They're telling us just to go with the official narrative. And of course, it's just over coronavirus now. It's going to, like I think you rightly pointed out, it's going to be the same with any, the party line. Just go with the party line here and only get your information from accredited. Yeah, but again, I still don't see that we're going to see that much of a difference in Jersey on a local scale.
The bottom line, as far as I see it, they call themselves a communications unit. But who is communicating with who? Are we supposed to sit here listening to what they say? Are they going to listen to what we say? And if they do, where's the opportunity for us to communicate with them? In this case, it's government. It could be big firms. It could be pharmaceuticals. It's the same old story. They want to manipulate and control the information that the public get. That's what they want to do. Half the time they're trying to sell us a product. Governments are no different. They're trying to sell us a product. And I think to call it a communications unit is misleading to start with, because it's not communicating at all. It's just a propaganda unit. That's what it is, an old-fashioned propaganda unit.
Yeah, yeah. And like I say, I come back to it. I know it's a kind of repeating myself, but the problem lies is this is the way it's always been. They put out a press release, the media, the old media repeat or report that press release, and we move on, and that's the way it's always been. But the problem is now that the new media, the old media, the state media is under pressure from social media, from new media. It's under pressure from the public, that it now wants answers. People are scared that the fear has been put into people by the media. So now they're trying to get answers from the government, and the government or the state's communications unit are saying, well, hang on a minute, you've never questioned us in the past. Why are you doing it now? This is all alien to us. And this is the problem. Yes, you're right. The official narrative, that's all that the state wants. And it's interesting to see that this new communications guy, Dirk Dastardly, said, he worked in the Prime Minister's office. What, the Prime Minister that put a bloody great big £350 million lie on the side of a bus? The guy lies like a rug. So, this is what we're up against. And this is why they want to shut down social new media, is they just want one narrative to go out, and that's it. And I think they might get their way. Then we go to this. Sorry,
the virus of all things, the virus is bringing this matter to a head, as is bringing so many things having to be reviewed, because obviously people are thinking, if the world does ever restore to anything like normality, a lot of this stuff will stay in place, won't it? This communications unit, for example, won't go away. They'll be trying to rebuild the finance industry. They want all the good PR they can get. And you won't be able to criticize anything, because it'll all be seen as a bad message to be sending out. We've always had that for years.
Well, we
and
had
all this
with P19.
Punching above our weight, leading the world, all that rubbish will all be trotted out for everything.
Yeah, well, we had all that. P19, 2016. The harmful telecommunications law amendments. We've had all that. Our state or our corrupt judiciary has been trying to shut. They shut Stuart Sivre's blog down. So they've been trying to control the public through legislation for years. You and I have been doing, we're not allowed to go to film scrutiny panel. We're not even allowed to take a photo, but the accredited media, who have consistently breached scrutiny protocols, are allowed back in every time. This is the irony of it, of all this, is anybody from the accredited media in the UK or whatever are allowed to, that they've got, like say, they've destroyed people's lives, that they've protected paedophiles, but they're more than welcome to be a part of a emailing list for the state's communications unit. They're okay to go into scrutiny panel hearings and be invited to press conferences, but guys like us, who tell the truth, who research, within inches of our lives, put out factual evidence, we're not allowed anywhere near the place because we're not controlled like the mainstream old media is over here, like, you know. And it's pretty much the BBC. I mean, God Almighty, you know, talk about a propaganda, and I'm not talking about just Jersey. You know, I'm talking about the BBC as an institution who protects paedophiles. You know, who puts out state propaganda all the time. But they're you know, they can go to any news event that they want, same as, you know, ITV and the rest of it, because the state knows that the mainstream media is tame, compliant,
Well, of course, unfortunately, in this island, it's the state, which certainly is the state, again, is really the mouthpiece for the finance industry, unfortunately, in this island, because it's so dominating, and that's a particular special problem. The City of London is extraordinarily powerful in what gets said in England, and the newspapers, the main newspapers, are totally supportive of that system. And of course, as we know, for various reasons, it's all coming together now, isn't it? Climate change, everything. The whole thing is falling apart. And this little virus, which is causing us so much desperate problems and killing people on a worldwide basis, this is going to challenge everything. And what happens about communications after all this, I don't know. We're going to have to stop, I think, because otherwise this will be an Encyclopedia Britannica-sized interview. So, final thoughts, Neil?
Well, I think obviously, you know, like you said, legislation, emergency legislation is being put in place that's almost certainly going to stay in place. Our civil liberties, our civil rights, our freedoms are all being stripped, eroded, taken away from us under the guise of this so-called coronavirus. You know, I would encourage people to not listen to a bloody word that Dirk Dastardly said at the State's Communications Unit, and do your own research. We've got that ability to do that now. We don't have to listen to the stuff churned out by the professional media, as he calls it, because that, you know, what makes them professional. Do your own research. Find your truth. Don't believe what you're told by the State's Communications Unit and repeated by the old media.
Okay, Neil. Thanks a lot.
Welcome.